Hello, boys and girls of Credit Union Land, and welcome to episode 25, a quarter of a century, of the CUInsight Experience. My name is Randy Smith. I am one of the co-founders and the publisher of CUInsight.com, and it is my job on the show to have conversations with the best and the brightest of the credit union community. I get to pick their brains and see if we can't find a few nuggets that we can all learn from. My guest on today's show is Linda Bodie. Linda is the president and CEO, or as her email signature states, the chief plus innovator at Element Federal Credit Union in Charleston, West Virginia. I'd seen Linda speak before, and when we were starting the podcast, I knew she was somebody that I'd like to have on. So I reached out through the Twitter machine, and here we are today. I enjoyed this conversation with Linda. We talked about a lot. Started out with diversity, equity, inclusion, and her path to becoming a CEO. We also talked about the ways small credit unions need to be innovative in finding solutions to not only stay relevant, to thrive like her credit union has over the past decade. As we do in every episode, Linda shared some leadership nuggets and life hacks that I know we're all going to be able to learn from, and we wrapped it all up with those rapid fire questions. Listen all the way through, and you'll even hear what Linda wants to do when she retires from credit union life. I'll give you a little hint. 2 words: steel drum. So without further ado, I give you my conversation with Linda Bodie. Enjoy. Linda, welcome to the show.
Hey, Randy, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Oh, I was excited for this. We had some time to actually talk and catch up at Co-op Think a while back. So really got me excited for our conversation today. And, you know, one of the things that we talked about while we were together at that conference was diversity and inclusion. And it's something that I've tried to bring up quite a bit on this show. And I'll tell you, one thing I still find is that people sometimes use those words interchangeably. Not only how do you define them, but could you, I guess, educate the listeners on the difference?
Well, I can tell you my version of what they mean. I think diversity is more of an adjective than anything else. It's about our differences, our color, our gender, the way we think, where we're from geographically. Inclusion, I think of it more as unconditional love. No matter how different we are, we still come to the table and love each other, accept each other, and respect each other's opinions. So everybody's included, everyone's valued, no matter how different they are. So that's the way I think about it in my brain.
I think that's a great way to say it. That idea, I don't know if it's an older school way of thinking or it's probably still prevalent out there, but that idea that we're supposed to assimilate to everybody else, basically, right? Like you're not even able to then tap into the things that make us all unique and the different ways of thinking. So yeah, I am with you there. I wanted to throw this out there to you. I mean, what are the biggest challenges that you see today facing women in the LGBTQ community to breaking kind of through that, I don't know if the right term to use, but the glass ceiling to get that seat at the table, in 2019?
Yeah, and you could call it the glass ceiling or the rainbow ceiling because both of those apply.
I love it. That's absolutely.
I think awesome. I heard that one recently. Even I'm not educated, and I'm in the community, so
we'll have to. I'll start using that one as well. That's awesome.
I hear new things every day.
Yeah.
From the LGBTQ perspective, probably the biggest areas of the barriers is visibility. Because I don't know how many people are comfortable being out in their workplaces with their friends. I still think it's a struggle for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think it's probably still a struggle in a lot of credit unions because of, number 2, acceptance issues. So are they going to be accepted? Are they going to lose their job because it's perfectly legal to fire somebody for being gay? Or straight. You can fire somebody for being straight. Nobody talks about that.
Right.
But
okay.
Just want to put it out there. And so what if your boss is homophobic? What if your leader, your team leaders are homophobic? You really put yourself out there and it's a big risk. So I don't even know how you overcome that because there's no way you can control, I guess, the viewpoints of others. You kind of just have to navigate your way through it cautiously and reveal yourself to the people you think are okay, or for every person it's different. But visibility is a problem because people don't accept you, and you can still suffer consequences.
That seems like a very tricky line to walk, I guess.
We've come a long way, but yet we've not come a long way in the same point. So people are still in charge, and they can still affect your livelihood, and that's always a struggle.
And a couple different questions on that. Is it education? Is it to push acceptance forward? Is it, we know the numbers, right? That's not I guess it almost has me speechless. It's mind blowing to me at this point in time. But is it education? Is it talking? Is it more people talking? Is it, what do you see as some of the things that to help, push acceptance forward? I'm going to use that word again.
Yeah, I think it is people being visible and out and telling their stories, because if people don't know any LGBTQ people, then they don't understand, and it's foreign to them. So the more you actually engage people, the more they're going to learn, and the more it's going to become normal. And it is normal for a lot of people, but for some people it's not. And when you get religion into the issue, then you can have a problem with anything with regard to religion. Because people have their very specific religious beliefs. So it's really hard to combat that, but to treat people with respect and dignity and like a regular human being shouldn't be a tall order.
It doesn't seem like it should be, does it? Have there been any specific challenges that you care to share on your road to a leadership position? You're a CEO. How did you overcome them if, say, someone out there today is listening and is like, I want to be me. I also want to be a CEO, any tips, any life hacks, Well,
I can talk about some experience. Number one, being female, you can't hide that, but right. Sometimes you can hide being gay. So I did that very well in the beginning because I was, concerned that would affect my employment. And this is 20 years ago when I started at my credit union. So it wasn't until I became comfortable that, you slowly come out, you're slowly accepted, and it's not even a big deal anymore. But, in the beginning, you're pretty anxious about it. Being female, my first jobs, and I'm old, I'm a little bit over 50. So think back. One of my bosses that I worked for hated his mother. He hated his mother. He hated women. So I had to work in an environment where my boss basically hated me because I was female.
You hated half the population, eh? And I worked for another boss who sexually harassed the female employees. I was not one of them, but there was many, many instances of harassment of usually the very attractive female employees. I also interviewed at a job for a real job, an accounting position. It was my first real accounting job interview. And they asked me if I had a problem serving coffee to the male boss every morning. I wasn't the secretary. I was going to be an accountant. I was going to have a real job. So these beginning experiences were, they were terrible, but that made me stronger. And it made me learn how to handle things in the future that I didn't really know. I was young and dumb, I guess. So you got to figure out what works. How do you get past that kind of nonsense? Do you think that sorry to jump in, did that make you, has that allowed you to become and maybe you don't even consider yourself an advocate, but I mean, like somebody who is now changing this or trying to change the system and make it better for the people that have followed behind you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think I was born a rebel because I think it was in my blood. Yeah. So it's just kind of manifested itself in where I'm working now. I think I would be this way no matter what. But as far as overcoming those situations, I just had to leave a couple of those companies because you can't change the situation. Sometimes the best answer is to leave. but then to find your way to leadership. How can you change? How can you interact? What skills can you start to develop? So I looked for places that valued women, which back then was, how do you find a place like that? And then I took charge without actually having charge, without being given the opportunity, saying you're in charge. I just did things. I just started doing things, making things happen. And I acted like a leader, and I ended up being a leader.
You're the second person who's said that on the show. Samantha Paxson on, I think it was episode 10, said the same thing. She's like, I didn't have the title. I just went and did it, so she's like,
and that might be a female thing too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That is something. That's for sure. I mean, there's so many different rabbit holes that I could go down on this, because I think of the closed-mindedness, and you're shutting off half the talent pool, and yet we hear there's a war for talent, right? Like, so it's mind-boggling to me, and it's one of the reasons that I like I've said, I'd love to have these conversations and keep having them, because hopefully they help. We will see. This is, it is an important topic. And we were kind of touching on this, as far as change goes, and maybe specifically to the credit union industry and the credit union movement, is that something that you view as being an individual effort? Is it a credit union effort? Is it more systematic at the league and the national level, or maybe just a combination of all three?
I think it's definitely a combination of all three, but I think the individual level is probably the most important. Because again, that's when you build relationships, you get to tell your story. People don't understand your perspective and what has happened to you until you tell them. It's kind of odd. I play this game with my colleagues all the time, or just random people. It doesn't have to be a colleague. But, I ask men questions and I ask women questions and see who knows the right answer. And so I ask about their perspectives about, what do you do every day to protect yourself against sexual harassment or assault? So, Randy, I'm asking you as a man, what do you do every day to protect yourself? I
don't even think about it.
You don't think about it, but you ask a woman that question, and the list is very, very long. And so when I approach these male friends of mine who are perfectly wonderful male friends, they're just astounded. They have no clue. So you got to talk to people. You got to educate people. You got to not hold it back, because they just don't have any idea, because they're perfect men and they've never heard.
Yeah. I remember, I think Jill asked me that question probably about a year and a half ago, as something that I think she was doing in a workshop she was teaching. I was like, no, I don't do anything. Then it was going through the list of, I hold my keys a certain way. I do this. The way I do it from morning till night. And I was like, there's nothing surprising. It's terrible, but yeah, it's and such then
if you're gay, then you got to throw the whole gay thing on that. Are you going to be, shot? Or are you going to be beaten up? So there's a whole other level that comes with that. And traveling to foreign countries, what do you have to worry about? Because in some countries, they'll kill you.
Yeah, so, that you can't even visit, right? Like, so, yeah, that is something. I did quite a bit of traveling over the last few years, and some of the gay friends that I met, there were certain countries like that were doing the kind of year abroad type thing and things of that nature, where they're like, yeah, we just can't do it. It's just not worth the safety issue, to be there. So that's. Yeah, a lot of change still needs to happen. That's for sure. Do you have any advice for if somebody wants to get involved, they want to be a more active voice? I mean, one of the things that I'm hearing from you is it's telling the story from an individual level. Is there anything else that you would recommend, whether it is at a system level or, to people that want to get more involved?
Just keeping the conversation going. It's not a one and done situation. It's constant, and it's constantly talking about it, recognizing the value in the different voices, and also helping people to feel more comfortable and I guess more empathetic with things that they've never experienced or they don't realize that's actually happening. So just conversation, not accusation, not defensiveness, just good old fashioned, let's talk this out and let me tell you how I feel. Let me tell you about my experiences. How can we make this better?
Yeah. Do you have any, is that conversation different if it's a woman or a man?
I don't think it depends on gender for me.
Okay.
It depends on the personality type.
Yeah.
Because if you're an introvert or an extrovert, or you like golf, or you're artistic, or
Yeah.
then the conversation is more geared toward personality and characteristics than it is to gender.
That makes total sense to me. This is a topic, honestly, that I think we could do multiple shows on, and one that like I said before, I plan on keeping the conversation going to do my part. I'd like to kind of do a hard switch and switch gears here a little bit. In an email leading up to the podcast, when you and I were going back and forth, you talked about using what you have to get to a solution. You run a small credit union that's done it looks like from the outside looking in, you've done very well there. In the email, you said sometimes that means taking the road less traveled. Could you talk a little bit to our listeners about what that means? And do you have a favorite example of how that's worked out well at Element?
Sure. When you're a small credit union, the resources are few and far between.
Yeah.
So we utilize our internal staff, whatever talents they have. Just recently, which I try not to spoil what's coming up, but we had a couple of our employees record a song for us.
Oh, wow.
So instead of going outside, we actually engaged people who have artistic talent, and they are making a song for us.
Oh, that's all. No, okay. Now, if by the time the podcast is released, that's been released, we will link to it for sure in the show notes.
I don't know if it'll be ready by then.
Okay.
But using the special expertise that your staff members might have, or even your friends and acquaintance, your membership, I've gotten lots of input from those people. So we kind of explore things instead of accepting a credit union cookie cutter recipe. So if you want to provide chat to your membership, don't look to a core provider or some expensive solution. You can do it right now. Google Hangouts, Skype.
Yep.
Set up a number for texting. If you want to do video banking, use FaceTime, use Skype, use Google Hangouts. You want to do X, look at everyday technologies that people are using and incorporate that into your process. So the biggest, I think, example of us being outside the box and doing things that, were kind of weird for a small credit union to do is back in 2009, we became the first institution to have remote deposit on the Apple iPhone.
Okay.
We were the very first. And we had 9 employees at the time.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So, and we had been doing electronic deposits for years. After Check 21 passed, we found a way for people to use their flatbed scanners to scan their checks, send them in for deposit. So that was like in 2005.
Yeah.
And then once phones got a camera on them, we were looking for ways to allow people to take a picture. And when the iPhone came along, then bingo. Make an app.
You made an app. So did you guys make that? Did you do that internally, or did you partner with somebody locally, or was that something that you went to like a credit union service provider or a provider of some sort?
It was actually my IT guy, my part-time IT guy.
That's awesome.
And he just said, well, I'll learn the code. I'll learn how to code in Apple and we'll make the app. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. When there was something when I was, scouring the interwebs for our conversation, and I was struck by on the Element website that you have a page that has the promise on the website, and it's a pledge that it says that every Element employee takes. First, could you tell us what this promise is, and why is this something that from your site, it looks like that's very important to you and the credit union?
Yes, it is. So on our website and at everybody's workstation, wherever they want to stick the pledge, that they have to know this pledge. They don't have to memorize it, but hopefully it's just ingrained in how they operate. But the pledge goes like this. I am creative and I will do everything I can to make your day. I'm helpful and I keep my promises to you. My attitude is positive and caring. I communicate with you at the speed of now. I am energetic and passionate. I take action to find solutions for you. And teamwork is core to our success. And then it ends with, the second we deviate from our promise to our members and to each other is the second we become like everybody else. So it's important for our employees to know who we are and what we expect them to be in representing us. And also to know how important it is that our membership is seeing the same promise. And if they fail to abide by that promise, then we're no better than everybody else. Yep. Because who abides by their promises?
Is that something that you came up with? Did your team come up with it, or?
I think our team came up with it. And if you take parts of the pledge, it actually has the word element in each sentence. So awesome. We made it a little funny little thing for them to remember. So there's keywords that make up each part. So.
It's
we did it internally.
There was a question that I wanted to ask you, and a part of it was after reading the pledge on your site. When you hear the words, "That's the way it's always been done," how does that make you feel?
Well, there are people who think that, and that's fine that there are people who think that, but we don't think that way.
Nothing about your website and like doing some research on the credit union made me think that at all. So.
No. We try to differentiate ourselves and do things differently and be different, because if that's the way it's always been done, and that's the way it always will be, then how many people are like that, and what makes you special? So we don't really subscribe to that thought.
You don't hear that one in your organization, I take it. So, I mean, a lot of small credit unions, CUInsight's now been around for 10 years, and the number of credit unions has been more than cut in half in that time. How has your credit union, how has Elements not only survived in that environment, but thrived?
I think there probably are three components to our success. The first one is attitude. You are what you think you are and what you think you will be. If your attitude is positive, you're going to do positive things. If your attitude is negative, then you're going to be negative. That's just the way it is. That's the way it is in life, and it's the way it is in the credit union. The second thing is grit. If you don't have the tenacity to do this, you're not going to make it. And you might not have the tenacity. You need to find the right people who are willing to fight, especially for smaller credit unions.
Yeah.
Because it is harder to have the talent to keep a small credit union operational and successful. I think it's easy to do because, maybe I'm the right person for the job, but it might not be easy for other people. But probably the biggest value is collaboration. We couldn't do what we do without collaboration, without working with our CUISO partners, without working with our other credit unions. These people, they're there for you all the time. They've never not been there for us. So the CUISOs have been extremely valuable to us and help from other credit unions. So I think anybody can survive if they've got those three things.
So that the collaboration is something that has been talked about on multiple podcasts as well. I think it was Tracy from the Montanas who said that it seemed like for a while people got away from that, and now it's coming back around, and it was something that she was happy to see. So that's when you say working with other credit unions, is that like in your near geographically, or are you doing that across the country? I know I've seen you at quite a few conferences, and I know you get out of the credit union also.
Yeah. I work with several CUISOs, so I'm usually working with the credit unions in the CUISO network.
Okay.
Because we're kind of either on the same core system or utilizing the same services. So those are the people that I usually collaborate with.
Yep. Is there a belief in credit unions currently that you think will fundamentally have to change in, say, the near future to keep relevance?
Yeah, and I think we just kind of touched on it when we're talking about collaboration. I think people still think that they have to hide what they're doing. They have to keep it private, and they have to go it alone. They can't ask for help, or they have some perfect solution in their credit union that nobody else should know about, or, whatever the reason is. People are still trying to do it by themselves. When you have a world that is collaborating, the entire world is collaborating.
Absolutely.
And why aren't we as credit unions why haven't we formed our own core systems, our own vendor solutions? Why are we feeding outside organizations that have no interest in credit unions? Think of the power and success that we could have if we all joined together and made our own core system, made our own payment system, made our own. What if we were just like a Bank of America? We have all these resources, pull them together. We can compete, but we haven't done that, have we?
We need to collaborate. That's interesting. It kind of leads right into the last question that I wanted to ask in this first part of the show was, it's been interesting over the first couple dozen podcasts. Something that I've personally believed is the idea that technology can be the great equalizer. And I've had some people push back and say, oh no, technology is expensive. It's actually hurting the smaller credit union, and that it's kind of made me sway a little on that. Do you view technology as an equalizer for the smaller credit union or for credit unions in general, or is it too expensive and actually causes, even more separation between the Bank of Americas and, the credit union on the corner?
Well, technology is definitely critical, and it is the equalizer. If you don't have technology, if you're not utilizing electronic services and technology solutions, then the future is it's going to be difficult. And so I think you can afford it, and I don't think you have to go for the big vendor that's charging, a number that you can't afford. There are other solutions out there. You just have to find them, see what fits with your strategy, do your due diligence. I once did a presentation to a small credit union group and explained that you could have all of these nice technological solutions for $99 a year. So some stuff's free, some stuff costs $99.
Yeah. You know what? I'm a small business owner, so the tools that I have at my disposal today are so much different than what I had 10 years ago, because you can lease them, you can subscribe to them, you can use them that it just wasn't available 10 years ago unless you could spend tens of thousands of dollars to get those. And now it's sure, I can sign up for $49 a month for that. That sounds fantastic. So that's one of those reasons I feel that way, is because in our own company, we see that we have so much more ability to do stuff with than we say we could have trying to deliver news to credit unions 10 years ago. So I'd like to move on to the second part of the show, the leadership and the life hacks, where people kind of get to know you a little bit more. And so the first question, always love to ask people, what inspired you originally to take the gig as CEO of Element Federal Credit Union?
Well, first of all, I was not inspired to take the job. I was offered the job when I needed a job. So
we often get in places for that reason, right? Then it sucks you in.
Exactly. So I had lost my job due to the company that I was working for moving out of state. I thought, well, I need a job. And I was presented with this opportunity to lead a small credit union. And at the time, I didn't really know anything about running a credit union. I was a member of a credit union, but that was never on my bucket list. And I thought it was just a pit stop until I found my real passion.
And now that's been a few years. So
20 years later, here I am.
I have to ask, how is the inspiration to take the gig was because you needed one. But how has the inspiration changed with time on the job over the past 20 years?
So when I took the job, it was kind of boring and, rulesy. There were too many rules, and I had to learn a whole bunch of stuff that I'd never dreamed that I would have to learn or ever do. So gradually I thought, if I'm going to stay here, we got to do things differently, because this just it was so boring, and it was just so dull and uninspiring. And I have an artistic side and an excitement side that just didn't accept that. So gradually started doing things differently, jazzing it up, see what would happen if you changed a form, if you change the way you talk to people, if you change the way you marketed to people. So it was kind of adding your own personal flair to the job. And they continue to let me do it, so I continue to do it.
I was going to say, was that a supportive board right off the get-go, or is it something that you kind of had to help show them the vision along the way?
Definitely had to show them in the beginning.
Yeah.
But so I think I became inspired once I was able to exercise some fun things instead of just, compliance and this is the way the form is and this is the way we've always done it.
How would you describe your leadership style?
I definitely am a servant leader, servant leadership. But I'm also not afraid to rock the boat or cause waves. Again, I've been this way my entire life.
The rebel side.
Oh, yes, always stirring things up. But I do appreciate, or I do get joy from helping members, helping people, the community. And that's how I lead, is just by helping.
How would your team describe your leadership style?
I actually asked one of my employees.
Yep.
And she was a little bit hesitant to respond.
I'm so intrigued now.
But I totally agreed with her response. She said, "You're all over the place. Your style changes depending upon what's happening in the credit union." She said, "I'm like a chameleon. So whatever's going on, you're leading. So you're switching gears. You're doing what needs to be done." So I agree with that. I think that's a perfect, depiction of how I appear to my team, because it's crazy here. I mean, 1 minute you're doing technology, 1 minute you're helping a member, 1 minute you're mowing the grass. Yep. I mean, there's all kinds of things that happen.
That's I've heard that from multiple CEOs of smaller credit unions. If they're in the north, they use the 1 minute you're shoveling the walk. So, has your leadership style changed over the years?
I think I've always been a servant leader because I've always been a servant style person. But I think that I've learned to improve my leadership skills as a servant leader. I used to let myself just be out there and just give more of myself than I had to give, to the point where I was exhausted or overworked, or you name it. I was putting everybody's needs before mine. So I learned how to not do that. But I'm still... Yes, I'm in the servant leadership, but guess what? I'm going to take care of me too, in addition to taking care of you.
That's a thing that I think we all hope we learn with some age, right? So it's for me personally, one of the greatest, I've said before on the podcast that things that I learned to do was to actually say no. So like, not yes to everything. Say just no. I can't do it. So it created a little space, and that's something that I thrive in. So, you talked about your team and the different hats they have to wear. What is the greatest strength of your team?
Our team is extremely flexible, and they're open to any wild thing that I say they need to do. They're very open to it, and not everything's wild, but if there's an issue that needs immediate attention, we can flip right on a dime and not miss a beat, and do what needs to be done.
Is there something that they've heard you say so many times they can finish your sentence?
There's a couple things that they can complete. And the first one is love what you do what you love.
I saw that was on your Skype handle across the top even. So
yeah, if you're not loving it, then you're in the wrong business. Well, that's my opinion anyway. Maybe you don't want to love your job, but I do. And then the second thing is our email policy is don't click.
Don't click.
Don't click. Shit.
Yep.
That's our email policy. And so when I say don't click, they know exactly what it means. And you know what? they don't click anything in emails anymore,
right?
Because of that simple policy.
It's catchy.
It is catchy. And when your boss says it to you, it kind of takes on a different tone.
Absolutely. When you think back to earlier in your career, is there a mistake that either you made or one that you see young leaders make over and over?
Well, I know I've done this, and probably other people have done this as well, is trying to be what others expect you to be instead of being what is you, what's your personality, your desires, being a robot instead of bringing your own personal flair to your job. When you try and conform to what they want you to be or what you think they want you to be, then you lose yourself and you don't really do any service to yourself or to the company that you're working for. So I try and tell people, you know what? Do what you're supposed to do, but add your own personal style to it and never stray from adding your personality to your job. I mean, because that's part of it, and that's what makes you special, and that's what makes a company special.
You be you. I agree. Has there been a piece of advice or a life lesson that you received that you find yourself going back to over your career?
I guess it's treat others the way you want to be treated, but also recognize their uniqueness in the process. So when I meet people, you're judging them. You're judging them like, you're seeing what hair color they have, their eyes, things like that. But you got to look at their history, where they're from, what their upbringing was. Have they lost a loved one? Have they dealt with abuse? There's so much behind each person, and to just be open to the fact that not everybody has a perfect life, and there's probably things going on that you don't know about. Just being aware to, yes, you want to treat them the way you want to be treated, but it might be a little bit different because they're from different circumstances.
You sound very empathetic. Is this something that have you always been that way? Is this something that you've, with more maturity? I
think I've always been this way because I can't remember a time when I wasn't really caring about how somebody else felt. That's always been in my brain, and I don't know why, but it has been.
It's a beautiful thing, that's for sure. I think we could use a little more of that out there today in today's world. So, when this was a question that I was looking forward to asking you, I've asked many people on the show, but when you run into a wall, you come up against a problem, to me, it seems like you guys are doing a lot of cool, innovative stuff at your credit union. So you kind of, there's a way to get it done. You hit the wall. Is there something that you do to either take a look at it from a different angle, clear the head, and come back and try to find the solution?
Yeah, there's a couple things. Definitely talking to other people outside the industry, just anybody. It doesn't matter, but not anybody in your credit union, to get a fresh perspective. If you're still looking for that solution yourself, I think physical exercise, anything to get your body moving, helps your mind get moving as well. And then if you have a beer or a glass of wine, then that frees your mind from the confines. Yep. Not like multiple beers, but just one to get loosened up enough to think through whatever issue that you're having.
I love it.
But I've used all those techniques, and they're pretty successful.
I was going to ask, you mentioned like a group outside the credit union, outside the industry. That's something that I've found also, to have somebody like that's not closely tied to it, kind of just, even if they don't know exactly what you're talking about, to go, have you thought of this? Well, that's simple. Maybe I haven't. So is it a group of friends? Is it a group of do you belong to professional networks? Is that a network that you've built intentionally, I guess, or?
It kind of randomly happened whenever I needed feedback. Then in the beginning, I approached my geeky friends if it was about technology solutions, because they're going to know They're going to know the geek side of it, but then I approached my artsy people and my regular non-geeky people to say, how's this experience for you? So the geeky people would help me maybe develop something, and the other people would say, well, this is dumb. Why do you have this here? I don't want to do that. So friends.
Just drawing from all sides.
Members of the credit union.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. As a leader, how do you make sure that not only like that your message is staying fresh to your team, but the credit union message is staying fresh to your members?
I think you have to keep up on what's going on in your community, in your world. What are the young kids doing? That's always important. So I engage my staff, and I engage all my staff, but because I'm old now, I have a lot of younger staff now. So, and that's kind of weird for me too. That's a weird transition to have. I'm not the young one.
I understand that feeling.
So they have great ideas. They are gung ho to do things, and I let them go. If you want to do this, you do it and you show it to me. So very rarely do I say no to anything that they want to do. But more of show me, let's talk about it, let's refine it, then go. So I don't know that happens in a lot of organizations. I think they just hit no, or later, this is stupid, but you never know until you try something. So allowing experimentation within the credit union with all of our employees has made a big difference.
Well, that's pretty cool. If you have a free day, nothing on the calendar, you've mentioned that you have an artsy side a couple of times. What passions do you have outside of credit unions? What is, what do you do to recharge?
Well, anything outdoors. I do live in West Virginia, wild and wonderful. If you can't find anything to do outdoors, then there's a problem. I'm also a musician. My current favorite thing to do, and part of my retirement plan whenever that happens, is playing steel drums.
Oh, really? So, is that something you've always done, or is this a newer passion?
It's been, I think, 8 to 10 years I've been doing it.
Okay.
It's so much fun.
Two questions on this, because you're obviously the first person on the podcast who plays the steel drums. How did you get into that? Like, was it a trip to Jamaica or something? You're like, I want to do that. Or like, what was the motivation, or what drew you in?
Well, it was not. We had an opportunity at our church. One of our people said, hey, I saw the steel drum band and this is so awesome, and we should do this as a program at church. And we got the right people on board. We bought some drums and we started playing church music, which, for the record, is really hard to find on steel drums.
On steel drums. So was music always a part of your life, though? Were you a musician before that, or? Yeah,
I've been a musician my entire life. So different instruments, and always loved listening to music. So that's probably my number one passion is music.
Oh, that's awesome. I'd like to move on. I want to be respectful of your time and get to the third part of the show, the rapid fire questions. The questions are rapid. Your answers do not have to be. So here we go. Do you remember the first time you got in trouble? Like memorable trouble that you'll share with us?
First? Yeah. This one is from kindergarten. I think this is my first recollection. And it was time to leave school. And we were waiting on the bus, and I believe it's probably wintertime because I was wearing this bright blue, fluffy, giant coat with the fluffy hat and the little balls on the end of the thing that tied your hood onto your head. And the buses were late. And I was in the classroom all bundled up, and I was starting to sweat, and I was becoming very uncomfortable. So apparently I had some choice words for the kindergarten teacher. So I did get into a little bit of trouble when I got home for, I guess, bad mouthing the teacher, or I have no idea. Again, very outspoken, very willing to rock the boat. But it also could have been the time that I actually climbed on top of the elementary school.
Oh, in elementary school.
Yeah. So it started out young.
The rebellious side again. So do you have any daily routines? Those things that if you don't do, your day just feels off?
If I don't get up early, my day is off,
Okay.
which I don't have a problem with because I'm a morning person and I wake up. But if something happens that I just don't get up at the right time, then my day is not, it just doesn't feel right.
Do you have anything you do first thing in the morning?
Well, I have some animals in the house.
Okay.
I have a couple dogs, and so I have to pay attention to them and feed them. And then we have this cat that's not our cat that comes into the house. Just started doing that. So I have to take care of this cat that's not our cat.
Is that the cat that has its own hashtag? So
it does. It's hashtag not our cat.
Hashtag not our cat. The random question, and music being your love. I'm interested to hear. What's the best album of all time? If you can only take one, the Desert Island. You can listen to it front to back.
Yeah. So this is really a hard question for me because there's so much good music. But you said I'm going to be on an island.
Yeah. You just said.
So if I'm just going to be on an island, then it has to be ABBA, because no matter what they sing, it's happy.
It's happy. Is there a specific album or just any ABBA at all?
I guess it'd be their greatest hits.
There you go. You get a little bit of all that.
If you want to be happy, you can listen to ABBA.
There you go. Well, I think we're going to make a playlist at the end of the year that should be pretty fun. I'm a big reader. We have a stack of books in our house that mostly have been recommended to us that we're trying to work our way through. Is there a book that you've gifted over time or just have recommended to a lot of people?
I don't really do that a lot, but the one book that I do recommend to people, and it's usually work people, is The Purple Cow, Seth Godin, which is one reason I went to the Think Conference, is because he was there.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of his, but I also gift The Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss to the kids that I know who are graduating high school, because I think it's the perfect book. It's here's your life right here in this sweet little wonderful book. Please take it to heart. Yeah.
What can you do? It can be a fun ride if you make it that way. As you've gotten older, what has become more important to you? And has anything become less important?
Definitely more self-care and taking care of myself. I think it's easier to not take care of yourself when you're younger because you're full of energy and nothing bothers you. But when you get older, it's not that way anymore. And then being over empathetic. Again, trying to be a little bit more about me. But being a servant leader, that's really difficult because you want to help people, but you're supposed to take care of yourself too.
Has anything become less important?
Things are less important. I don't want things. Experiences are most important.
You speak my language, that's for sure. So there's a question that I didn't send you in advance. When you hear the word success, who's the first person that comes to mind?
I don't think of a person, a particular person. I think success is for anyone who has overcome any obstacles, any major obstacles, any life situations, and they've come out of it as a better person and actually alive. I think that's success, as well as when they're accomplishing the things that they set out to do. So I don't have any person.
That's
people.
I love the sentiment there, though. That's fantastic. The reason I love that question and I don't send it in advance is the idea that I think we all define success differently. So I think it's fun to see what comes up. I think that's a great way to wrap up the show. I thank you again for taking your time and being on it. The last question that I have of you is, do you have any final thoughts or final asks of our listeners?
I guess just always believe you can do and be whatever you want to be. Don't listen to other people. Do it yourself. And be true to your authentic self, and you'll make better decisions and be happier. So just be you.
Just be you. I love it. I love it. We will link to everything we talked about in the show today in the show notes. Is the Twitter handle the best way to get a hold of you if people have additional questions, or do you have a preferred way for people to contact you?
Twitter's fine. Email. I'm sure people can find me if they want to talk to me.
Well, thank you again, Linda. I greatly appreciate this, and I hope you have a fantastic day.
Thanks, Randy.